morning. We are on part 25 of our core knowledge studies. First part, slapped evolution in the face, showed there was a faith. Part 2 through now, we talked about creation, we talked about the flood, and right here we're talking about after the flood, when the first civilization, Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. But right now we're going to focus on the scattering at the Tower of Babel. So they all spoke one language. They were all together and they spoke one language. And God saw that they were doing this. So Genesis 11:4-9 talks about, then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its tops in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord, he didn't want them to be able to do this. He didn't want them to be together and be able to do so much wickedness. So, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do, because they're going to do a lot of evil." Notice as we get more towards the globalist agenda, more and more babies are sacrificed and killed, more and more sexual debauchery is done. People are more lovers of self. Just everybody wants to have their own way. It's a do as thou wilt scenario. Do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. You can do everything you want to do except follow Christ. Do you notice that? I watch TV sometimes and I realize that the only religion that is ever made fun of on television is Christianity. Not Islam, not Hindus, not Mormons, not Jehovah's Witnesses. Christianity is the only thing that is made fun of on TV. Why? Because it's a do as thou wilt system where the devil is in charge. Do as thou wilt, and we're going to mock Christianity. Do all as thou wilt, except Christianity. That is what they do. So, it says, "And nothing that they propose to do now will be impossible for them. Come, let us go and confuse their language, so they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord limited the amount of power that they could have. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. So they all had different languages now, 6,500 different languages. Your buddy who you was talking to, working on building this tower, all of a sudden he starts speaking a different language and you don't know what he's saying. You go home, at least you probably your family could still speak what you speak now, but the Lord literally changed the languages of all the people. And today we have 6,500 different languages around the world. Not our most common languages, but that's how many are spoken around the world. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So that is how we got Babylon. We're going to watch a thing on the scattering from the fuel project. This will be our last fuel project video. Matter of fact, let's watch it now.
When sinful perversion and wickedness took hold of the world the first time, God sent a flood to wipe the slate clean and start it again. However, our study so far has shown that within just a few generations of the flood waters receding, wickedness was already re-establishing itself in the world, with Babylon at its epicenter. It seems that as long as people are unified and left to their own devices, the result will always be a swift descent into degradation, the natural state of the unreformed human heart. God had already promised not to reset the world with a flood again, and even if he did, it would only be a few generations before he would need to do it again. C.S. Lewis put this well in Mere Christianity. What Satan put into the heads of our remote ancestors was the idea that they could be like gods, could set up on their own as if they had created themselves, be their own masters, invent some sort of happiness for themselves outside of God, apart from God. And out of that hopeless attempt has come nearly all that we call human history. Money, poverty, ambition, war, prostitution, empires, classes, slavery. The long terrible story of man trying to find something other than God which will make him happy. The reason why it can never succeed is this. God invented us as a man invents an engine. A car is made to run on gasoline, and it would not run on anything else. Now God designed the human machine to run on himself. He himself is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn, or the food our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. That is why it is just no good asking God to make us happy in our own way without bothering about religion. God cannot give us a happiness and a peace apart from himself, because it is not there. There is no such thing. That is the key to history. Terrific energy is expended, civilizations are built up, excellent institutions devised, but each time something goes wrong. Some fatal flaw always brings the selfish and cruel people to the top, and it all slides back into misery and ruin. In fact, the machine conks. It seems to start up all right and runs a few yards, and then it breaks down. They are trying to run it on the wrong juice. That is what Satan has done to us humans. To solve this problem, instead of wiping everything out and starting again every few generations, God had a far more subtle but long-lasting solution. So long-lasting that it is only now, in the 21st century, that mankind is getting close to reversing it. He said, "Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages, then they won't be able to understand each other." The key to confounding the building of the Tower of Babel and the satanic agenda that it represented was to confuse their language, thus inhibiting them from working together. It brought confusion and eventually caused them to scatter, leaving their plans unfinished. In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world. Babel literally translates as confusion, and it is the word through which we get Babel in English. But as the people scattered, they carried with them the remnants of their mystery Babylon religion wherever they went. This religious system of muddled half-truths and inversions of the truth spread across the globe, and it formed the wellspring for all subsequent false religions and endless mythological systems. And this is where the story gets trickier to follow. As the people scattered outwards from Babylon and into the rest of the world, the single, easily identifiable mystery religion became different things in different places at different times. Marduk or Nimrod, Astarte or Semiramis and Tammuz had already been given multiple names to represent different parts of their character, and had then developed into distinct personalities as legends and myths cropped up around them. These distinct personalities were then assigned to various aspects of daily living. There was the god of war, the god of the sea, the god of fertility, and the sun god, etc. Indeed, a god or goddess for just about everything. So we already had perhaps hundreds of gods. But because everyone now spoke a different language and they had moved to different regions around the world, these gods and goddesses assumed different names depending on the location. In Greece, Astarte became known as Aphrodite or Athena. In Egypt, she became Isis. In Canaan, she became Ishtar. In Ephesus, she became Diana. In Israel, she became Ashtoreth. The Phrygians knew her as Cybele. In Phoenicia, she is known as Europa. In Rome, she was known as Ceres and Venus. As the goddess of Thelema, she is Nuit, Tanuit, or Anuit. In India, she became Kali. So the gods multiplied and hundreds became thousands. It's estimated that there are around 5,000 different names altogether for the goddess stemming from Semiramis alone. As I read those names, some of them will have rang a bell, while others will be more obscure. Names like Aphrodite and Venus are still widely known. Others like Demeter and Cybele are now mostly unheard of. Or on the male side you will have heard of Apollo, Mars, Achilles, or Poseidon, but may perhaps be less familiar with Nebo or Nabul. The names that are still well known tend to be the Greek or Roman forms, mainly because they had such great empires, and as a result their mythologies were most widely spread, written about, and preserved. So well preserved that they are still household names. There are shaving products named after Venus. We had a NASA rocket ship called Apollo. We've had movies like Troy starring Brad Pitt as Achilles, in which some of these muddled half-truth stories and legends of heroes are depicted. The name Europa has even become the name of a whole continent, but they all go back to just 3 people from Babylon: Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. You can see the common threads if you look for them. You will see recurring titles such as Queen of Heaven, the Great Mother, Mother Goddess, or even Mother Nature. You will see how it is just one woman under different names, and that she has existed in all cultures and civilizations throughout history. You'll also see how all those ancient mythologies contained family relationships and feuds, very often culminating in murder and incest. You'll see the recurring theme of mother and child cults that began with Semiramis and Tammuz. You'll see these threads uniting even major religions of today like Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Catholicism. You'll discover in fact that all false religions sprang from the mystery Babylon religion, and that is why they have these commonalities. Keeping track of all the routes the Babylonian religious system took, however, is impossible and also unnecessary. We don't need to do an in-depth analysis of how the mysteries became Hinduism in India or Buddhism in the Far East, for example. We only need to focus on a few threads, namely how the mysteries spread from the Middle East into Europe. The key point at this stage, however, is to understand that all mythological systems and false religion and gods and goddesses can be traced back to just 3 people in Babylon, and behind their mystery religion is Satan himself.
It is a good thing that the Lord confused and scattered all the people away. When humanity can amass so much power, we become dangerous. When we can get all our evil thoughts together, we become like nothing else. I talked about how the Lord limited man in verse a day number 2, and how it was a good thing for the underdog. And in verse a day number 51 through 61, I talked about how he sets up kings and removes kings, and that is a good thing. He does not want someone to amass too much power, lest more and more evil runs rampant. As Luke 1:51 to 52 says, he has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. Yes, he has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. I'm so glad that he levels the playing field when too much evil has been amassed. Tomorrow we will talk about how we see this today, and I will show you how we as Christians should worship now that we know about Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, and how Satan is the king of Tyre, and that Nimrod was simply just a puppet of his. How when they deified Nimrod to be the sun god, Satan was easily able to put himself in that position. He's behind the masters. He's behind the masters of the human race. The leaders. It's a spiritual thing. Though they may be the facial front, the devil is behind it all. And one of these days, when the antinomial, the man of lawlessness, the son of perdition, comes into scene and achieves his globalist agenda, behind him and possessing him will be Lucifer. Best believe. Tomorrow we'll talk more on this and how all this Nimrod worship and Babylon things pertains to Christianity today. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and may many be saved. And thank you for our studies on the history and knowing how humanity began. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Goodbye.